The goal of the retreat was to help the cast of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta's Season 13 heal and start over. However, the events that transpired were far from tranquil. It all began with a small argument between Spice and Bambi. Fans are accustomed to this type of sharp-tongued confrontation, but few anticipated what happened next. In front of the entire group, Mena snapped at Mendeecees in a scene that has everyone talking, yelling the now famous line, "I'll have you imprisoned." Yandi was totally unprepared, stood motionless and immobile. Her eyes spoke for themselves: fear, treachery, and confusion. Time seems to have stopped there. There have been videos going around. The same question is being asked by fans who are responding in real time. What caused Erica to become so irate? Did Mendeecees say something? Or did years of stress finally get to you? One unfiltered, passionate outburst. Reactions are all over social media. Erica went too far, according to some. Others claim that Mendeecees' anger must have been sparked by something she did off camera. Yandi slept while standing in the center of it, all seeing her world fall apart once more. It wasn't your typical retreat battle. It was a personal matter. Fans are now asking, did Season 13 just change everything for this trio? Let's examine the situation in light of rumors of legal threats and unsolved conflict. Like all other phony communications, it began with a hip-hop and love trip. Awkward smiles, drinks, and that subtle tension you sense but no one discusses. For what the producers referred to as a healing retreat, the cast had been reunited. However, everyone in the audience was aware that an explosion was certain. It didn't take long this time either. At first, it wasn't even that deep. What started it all? There was some back and forth between Spice and Bambi on who was and wasn't acting false. Spice made fun of them. Within minutes, the gathering had changed from lighthearted banter to loud voices and sidelong glances as Bambi returned the clap. Bambi got to her feet. With a drink. She spoke in a calm but heated tone. Her voice was crisp as she said, "You always got something slick to say." To Spice? As if the remarks didn't bother her, Spice brushed her hair off her shoulder and didn't back down. All it took was to say, "Nah, you're just sensitive. Don't blame me if your truth sounds like shade." Tension crackled like a live wire when the table fell silent and everyone's gazes shifted between the two women. In an attempt to prevent a conflagration, Yandi leaned in Mendeecees' direction and muttered something. However, the fuse was already ignited. Erica had been sitting there seething, but no one noticed it at the time. You could see how her jaw tightened and her eyes scanned the room even though she wasn't involved in the first argument. She watched and waited. Something changed in Erica the instant Bambi mentioned phony friendships and people only appearing when cameras were around. Her head jerked in Yandi's and Mendeecees' direction. She exclaimed loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's funny. There are some individuals here who truly enjoy performing when they believe no one is looking." Mendeecees arched a perplexed eyebrow. What is the intended meaning of that? His voice was forceful but quiet as he asked. Yandi stared in surprise as Erica laughed and tilted her head before saying, "You know what it means? You and your picture-perfect wife need to stop acting like you're above the mess when you're half the time stirring it." Calmly, "Erica, this has got nothing to do with us," she stated. She seemed to be trying not to let the circumstance affect her, too, as seen by the tight, controlled tone of her voice. Mendeecees intervened, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. He answered, "We're not here for all that." Although it's meant to be a fresh start, Erica wasn't finished. She pointed straight at him as she rose up from her seat. "Clean slate," she said again, raising her voice. "You don't get to show up after everything and act as though you're not the issue, you see?" It became considerably quieter in the room. Every one of the small side chats ceased. The phones were out already. A record had been hit. Spice and Bambi were now observing, their argument entirely forgotten, as Erica began tempo. "Do you wish to appear innocent?" Mendeecees shook his head in response to her statement. but I remember the things you said about me. It's the little comments, the side conversations you thought I didn't hear. I have no idea what you're discussing." However, Erica wasn't paying attention. Once more, she pointed. "Don't tell lies. You and your spouse enjoy pretending to be superior. To everyone else, you don't gossip. For example, you don't get untidy in front of other people." Erica interrupted Yandi just as she was about to say something. "And you simply stand there grinning as if you're not listening to him talk slickly." Yandi's expression shifted. She lost the composure she had been attempting to maintain. "You have some nerve," she said. "Tell me you have an issue with me. Don't include my marriage in your mess, though." Erica gave a sour laugh. "It's a disaster now, I see. Yandi, I assumed you were above the mass. You say that all the time, don't you? You pick and choose who receives your grace, despite your constant preaching about healing and family." Mendeecees moved in front of them. He said, "This is getting out of control. For genuine, we need to relax." However, nothing was calmed by his voice. Erica only became more irate. "You believe no one will confront you if you simply play the peacekeeper? No, not now." Her face was inches from his as she moved closer to him. "I'll have you locked up if you don't stop talking. Slick up." The remarks were like a grenade to the room. Everybody froze. Gandhi opened his mouth, but did not speak. Stunned, Mendeecees stepped back. "Just what did you say?" inquired. Erica folded her arms. "I heard you. Had enough of the games. We'll see how quickly things move to the left if you keep pushing me." The threat in her voice was loud despite its calmness. "A dot." Bambi whistled quietly, she said as she took out her phone. Just like everyone else did, this just went to another level. With startled eyes, Spice murmured something to the girl next to her. Unsure whether to cut the moment or let it play out, one of the producers who was off camera took a step forward. DC Men did not move. He clenched his jaw. "You're saying that you'll call the police on me? For what purpose?" Erica gave a shrug. "For anything I'm feeling. Perhaps for approaching too closely. Perhaps in an attempt to scare me. Perhaps because you believe you are the most composed person in the room. You believe you can speak to me in any manner." Yandi entered now, her voice sharp, and after she glanced around she said, "Let's not pretend like men don't get away with a lot on this show just because they keep their voices low. Stop it, Erica. You're making things worse. No one approached you or held up a hand. You initiated this." Erica turned to face the fire in her eyes. "I started this." "No, you guys started it by making me feel like the crazy one and behaving as though I was constantly going beyond when, in reality, I was just responding to pressure." Mendeecees inhaled and attempted to diffuse the situation once more. "Listen, you can't simply go about threatening people like that. I don't want any problems." There was no warmth in Erica's smile. "Watch me," she said. "So I'll actually do it the next time instead of simply saying it." A modest dam was released by someone in the background. The room's energy had changed entirely. No more false peace. No more jokes. Nobody knew what would happen next, and this was a serious boundary being crossed. Producers were transfixed, cameras were rolling, and Yandi appeared to be breaking in the midst of it all. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't in tears. However, you could tell something had changed inside of her because her hands were trembling slightly. Something from which it would be difficult to recover. Mendeecees initially remained silent. He simply stood there and gazed at Erica, as though he was attempting to comprehend how things quickly became out of control. The room wasn't waiting, though. Voices began to rise once more. The crowd is humming. Everyone is filming, whispering, and responding. "Yo," Bambi whispered, leaning toward Spice. "This is going to be on every blog by tonight." Spice nodded, her eyes fixed on Erica as if she was still in shock at what she had just seen. The whole energy was inverted, was only unadulterated. Anxiety that could be cut through no jokes, no retreat sentiments. A dot. Everyone could see that Erica wasn't finished, but she turned around and took a few steps away as though she was, with her mouth clenched and her arms folded tightly. Across her chest, she started pacing. Without even turning to face them, she spoke the words, "Have you ever had enough?" Yandi's voice was low as she tried to prevent the situation from getting worse. Like, just done with people acting like they can play with your name and your story and think there won't be consequences. Nobody is teasing your name, Erica. Tonight, we didn't even mention you. Erica came to a halt and gently spun around. Oh, I'm making it up now. Her gaze shifted between Yandi and Mendeecees. Really, Chris? You all act so innocent and clean all the time. If I become the villain after saying one thing? However, things are very different when you two converse behind closed doors. At last, Mendeecees came forward. The room's air became congested. The creators themselves were no longer acting invisible. Near the back, a few of them were whispering to one another as they debated whether to stop the cameras or continue. There were still some casts and phones in use. In order to avoid being caught in the midst of what was obviously rapidly spiraling out of control, for a long time, no one moved. The air seemed heavy, as though someone was actually breathing. It could trigger another explosion if it's too loud. At last, Mendeecees turned away and walked with his hands on his head toward the patio's edge. He was standing motionless, attempting to gather his thoughts rather than moving. The camera caught him from the side as it zoomed in from a distance. The stress in his posture spoke louder than his mostly veiled face. It was not the sort of drama you could ignore. The sort that stayed with you was this one. Erica sat down slowly inside, just like she was beginning to feel the weight of what she had just unleashed. She had stopped yelling. She stopped talking and continued to stare at her hands, as if to divert her attention while she twisted a bracelet around her wrist. Yandi stood a few steps away, her eyes wet but her face firm, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Despite the fact that she was silent, her words were not as loud as her silence. Bambi nodded as Spice leaned down and said in a whisper, "Yo, that went too far." When she said, "way too far," on tape, she actually threatened to lock him up. It seems like none of them desired to be close to the core of it anymore. They didn't laugh. They weren't being disparaging. Like everyone else, they were merely observing. Then the stillness was finally broken. Off to the side, Shakina was standing with her arms crossed and her brows up. She's voice broke the silence as she asked, "Can we just be real for a second? Erica, are you mad? I understand, but making such a threat to call the police on a black man in public is unacceptable. We must be better than that, please." Erica's face tightened as she looked up. "I'm not sorry for my feelings in that moment," she said. "I was set off." Shakina gave a head shake. "You're heard." "I do. However, you went over the line." That kind of threat has the power to destroy someone's life, whether you intended it or not. Erica blinked quickly, but she remained silent. Perhaps because she was aware that what had just been stated had some truth to it. Perhaps she was reluctant to confess in front of all those cameras. Mendeecees emerged outside and returned inside. At last, although his expression had calmed, it was still not serene. He appeared worn out and depleted, as if the burden of everything was now settling in. He approached Yandi directly, lowered his voice, and asked, "You good?" Yandi took a moment to respond. She had not finished processing. She gave a small nod. At last, but her gaze remained fixed on Erica. Men with dots. DC turned to Erica and spoke in a composed yet serious tone. He said, "I don't know what I did to make you feel that way. It's threatening to lock me up, however." You know when you've gone too far?" Erica looked him in the eye. "You've been criticizing me from the beginning," she muttered. "I hear what you say behind my back, even when you're smiling in front of me." "Yandi and you both. Mendeecees gave a headshake. Nobody is flawless. Yes, we may have spoken, but it's not appropriate of you to come after me in that manner. Not in front of all these people, especially. His voice grew somewhat louder as he glanced around the room. Because of what they see on television, people already believe they know us. However, that's not the whole picture either, as they witnessed tonight. At last, Yandi spoke in a steady, low voice. When we are hurt, we all say things. However, she hesitated. This was not like the others. You weren't merely trying to harm him, you attempted to ruin him. For what purpose? Because it seemed to you that we didn't value you? Erica, that's not how you earn respect. Erica got back up. You don't have to lecture me. She claimed that for years, you had been dishonest with me. You only give the support you claim to give when it helps you seem good. However, I become the antagonist the moment I point something. Yandi remarked, unflinching, you made yourself the villain tonight. That was all your own doing. The words were powerful. Erica's mouth clenched. She appeared to be about to retaliate, but something stopped her. It might have been fatigue. Perhaps it was the fully closed, finished expression in Yandi's eyes. There was a lot of enthusiasm in the room. Nobody was no longer shouting. The silence, however, seemed more overwhelming in some way. Everyone was observing, anticipating the next speaker and the next action. The anxiety was abruptly relieved by the sound of a phone alarm. A crew member gasped as they glanced down at their screen. Yo, they said it's already online. Everyone's phones were out in a matter of seconds. The moment had gained momentum on social media. Already, the video of Erica yelling, "I'll have you locked up," was making the rounds. It was being reposted by pages. It was being dissected by fans. Hashtags were all over the place. Trending topics included timelines, Aruka Mena, Mendeecees, Yandi, and LHL Season 13. In real time, people were taking sides. Spice shook her head. As she browsed through her feed, the comments are crazy. Yeah. Leaning over, Bambi continued to read. There are many who claim that Erica set him up. All right. Others claim that Mendeecees was deserving. Kane Yandi, everything slowed down for a while. The world seemed smaller, yet the cameras were still rolling. Faye? The three of them were alone, surrounded by a disaster they were powerless to clean up. The door then opened. While muttering something to another crew member, a producer entered. The message was sent quickly. VH1 was already asking for the video to be reviewed. Just in case the legal staff had been informed. Drama was no longer the only thing, it was business. And then things are different. A dot. Yandi glanced toward Mendeecees after glancing at the cameras. Are they going to let this go unchecked? Well, he gave a headshake. With that clip out there, no way. Erica said nothing. Once more, her phone buzzed. One more message. Another repost from a blog. You could see the weight of what she had said weighing heavily on her shoulders. Thought? Outside, it was cool. Everything was still blazing. However, inside the retreat house, the damage was already done. Trust was broken. Reputations are at stake. Only the individuals in the room were aware of how genuine it seemed, even while the rest of the world watched through their screens. This was no longer a plot point. This was the price of drawing attention to oneself, of talking too loudly, of pushing too much. And no one was certain that there was a way out. Not now. The retreat house was silent later that night, but not in a serene way. It was shattered. The late-night beverages, the confessional conversations in the kitchen, and the regular laughter. That was not occurring. Dead lights were turned down early, the rooms were sealed off, and the few remaining cast members conversed in whispers. Yandi was sitting by herself on the back patio, bundled up in a blanket, gazing out into the trees. She didn't look down even though her phone buzzed every few seconds. She was aware of it already. More noise, more clips, and more comments. Mendeecees walked the corridor inside. He hadn't eaten or slept, and his mind kept going over everything again. The way Yandi's expression altered as the narrative was taken up by the internet. The way the room responded and the way Erica had delivered those words. It was now about all that followed, not just the event. As the world watches in real time, how can you bounce back from being accused on camera and threatened with police involvement? Erica was going through her texts while curled up on the side of a bed in another area of the house. Some were supporting her and praising her for her courage in defending herself. Others were accusing her of being nasty, cunning, and deadly. She had previously endured a lot on the show. However, this was unique. She was aware of it. It was palpable in her chest. A part of her knew she had gone too far, even though she wasn't prepared to admit it aloud. Her door was abruptly knocked on. She took a while to respond. There was another knock, and this time there was a low voice, nearly worn out. "Can we have a conversation?" It was the dot of Mendeecees, slowly. Her face, unreadable. She opened the door. His hands were in his pockets as he stood there. ... Not confrontational, not angry. A beat later, she moved to make room for him. The TV was playing something neither of them was actually watching, and the room was dimly lighted. Men from DC sat down on the other side of her. There was a moment of silence before he spoke. You probably have no idea what that moment accomplished. Erica averted her gaze. Do you suppose I'm unaware of its size? Hey, ever since it aired, I've been mentioned a lot. I don't mean that, he said. I'm not referring to the blogs here. I'm referring to us, this cast, this ensemble. With a single sentence, you completely altered the dynamic. She inhaled. I was in a tight spot. You said you would call the police on me then. Still composed? He asked. But there was a lot of weight. In his voice, I assume you are aware of how that seems. Not only for our children Yandi, me, and everything else we've been working to create, you gave me a sense of insignificance. As if I was always the loud one, the theatrical one, she shot back, finally meeting his gaze. One, the one at which people scoff. I had had enough of being ignored. So say that, he answered. Say that you are offended. Let's say you're injured. But Erica, don't use the police as a weapon. Not here on Earth, not in this weather. She had no answer for that. She twisted her fingers as her gaze returned to her hands. Mena was silent for once. Really silent. Mendeecees went on, I am not here to fight. I just had to tell you directly that what you said is accurate. I came down heavily. It's more than just a show moment. Real individuals are harmed in real life, he added quietly. Downstairs. Yandi was talking to one of the producers when Erica eventually remarked, I didn't want to hurt you, but you did. Despite her controlled, quiet voice, she spoke with seriousness in every word. This shouldn't be misconstrued, in my opinion. People must realize that the events were not pre-planned. She was not instructed to say that. It was true. Additionally, it will do more harm than you might imagine if it is altered to appear like a small altercation. The producer promised to bring it back to the network and nodded while writing something down. However, Yandi had spent too much time. In this game, she was aware of how these things operated. Hey, a season may be defined by one stunning clip. A reputation could be ruined by one poor edit. Furthermore, once it was out there, it couldn't be recovered. The cast was gathered for a group scene later that night. Something that the creators hoped would provide some clarification or closure. They were seated in a large circle in the main living area. Spice and Bambi said nothing. With her usual skepticism, Shakina sat back in her chair and observed everything. Last to enter, Erica's face was inscrutable. On the other side of her was Yandi Y. Mendeecees beside her. There was a prolonged period of silence in the room when the camera began to roll. The hush was finally broken by Yandi. The goal of this retreat was to help us rebuild and reconnect, but it became something else entirely. We all know, I believe, why Erica didn't respond. I'm not hostile toward you, Yandi said. I don't even think you're bad. However, I do feel deceived, and I'm not sure if we can recover from that. Slowly, Erica nodded. I don't think you'll pardon me. I do want to say something, but not immediately. Everyone was watching intently as the room leaned in a little. Have experienced a great deal throughout my life. Items that caused me to act before thinking. And that isn't a justification, simply the reality. I was in a tight spot. I experienced judgment. I snapped. What I said was inappropriate. A pause occurred. Not about the police in particular. Mendeecees gazed at her, looking for genuineness in her face. That is a beginning, he remarked. A dot. Spice, she folded her arms. People aren't going to simply get over this, are they? I understand, Erica said. However, Bambi said I had to say it. Then let that be the final time because it might not make the headlines the next time. It may be real. Slowly, everyone nodded. The producers were relieved as well, as if they had received the necessary material to advance the project. The energy was still strong though. There was no laughter. No one was giving it a hug. The injury was too new. A dot. The last group. Supper that evening was unpleasant. While eating in small groups, people's phones continued to hum with emotions and updates. There was tension, silence, and people attempting to digest what had happened. No major explosions or fresh altercations. Once back in her room, Yandandi used a blank screen to write a brief message to her Instagram story. Even when it hurts, we learn from difficult times. That evening, Erica avoided using social media. She could tell what others were saying without reading the comments. Rather, she sat with pen in hand, journal open, trying to write something honest. She began, paused, and then resumed. I can't take back what I said today, but perhaps tomorrow I'll figure out how to make amends. Mendeecees didn't share any content. He didn't go live, didn't reply to any texts. He simply lay beside Yandi in bed, uncertain of what would happen next. They both stared at the ceiling. This was no ordinary season. It's marked a sea change. The retreat was declared to be over by the following morning. Early checkouts were demanded by producers. Outside, fans were awaiting the cast's return too. The airport. Everyone packed in silence, giving hugs only to those they felt a strong connection with. Erica stopped as she passed Mendeecees and Yandi in the driveway. She hesitated. Shh, she whispered. I meant what I said last night. And I'm hoping that things will change in the future. Yandi gave a nod, but remained silent. Mendeecees nodded slowly before averting his gaze. The engines began, and the automobile doors closed. Suddenly, the cast of Season 13 of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta departed from the retreat home. Not the same as when they got there. Some shattered, some stronger. They all underwent changes. It was all captured on camera. However, only they would ever truly comprehend the reality, the actual truth. What transpired at that retreat was a turning point that no one anticipated, not just another dramatic moment for the camera. Fans worldwide were left with more questions than answers. After Mena's explosive threat, Mendeecees' startled response, and Yandi's defenseless position in the midst of it all. Was it only an intense dispute that got out of hand? Or did Erica truly mean what she said when I'll have you locked up, she warned? And although there was never an arrest, the emotional damage was genuine. Love and Hip Hop Atlanta Season 13 will never be the same as friendships broke down and trust was destroyed. One thing is certain once the dust settles, this season simply elevated the standard for what it means to be honest and unvarnished on reality TV. Fans continue to analyze every word, every tear, and every look in an attempt to take sides. Did Erica go too far, or did she cross an uncrossable boundary? Is Mendeecees truly the voice of calm in a storm? Or does it go deeper than that? How is Yandandi doing? When those closest to her are disintegrating, she would continue to hold herself together. However, we would like to hear from you now. Who do you think is responsible? Was Erica being honest in a painful moment, or did she go too far? Should Mendeecees have taken a different approach? And will there be any repercussions from this type of public backlash? Leave your ideas in the comments. Don't be shy. Attempting to survive the mayhem as a member of Yandi, Erica, or the Mendeecees. If you are locked in from start to finish, press that like button. Additionally, remember to subscribe so you don't miss any more in-depth. Explore the major events that are reshaping reality television. Gossip Vibe is the place where we dissect it thoroughly rather than merely observing the drama. See you at the next one.